Well, thank you very much for staying with us on the AM show. Time now for us to get into our major conversations for the day. We call them our big stories, and we're getting into those as we dilate on those very salient matters. So guess what? We have some members of parliament in the studio this morning. They are joining us for these all-important conversations. We have joining the conversation Alhassan Suini. And of course, he is Member of Parliament for Tamale North. He joins the conversation. We also have Dr. Dixon Adumaku-Kisi, Member of Parliament for Anya Sobutuom. Both of them join us for this end of the conversation. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's good to have both of you. I think the last time I interacted with either one of you was with Alhassan Suini. We had this interaction virtually, I remember.
Okay, yes.
You were there firing salvos towards the studio.
Yeah.
As for Dr. Adumaku-Kisi, it has been 1,000 years since the days of Goliath. So welcome back.
Thank you.
Wow.
Gentlemen, so like I usually do.
He's been campaigning. You didn't ask him where he's been.
Oh, we'll be getting into a bit of that. Especially as on the back of your win retention as well in Tamale North. We'll be getting into all of that. But just on the back of time allocations, in order to be fair to all parties and to ensure that we're all on the same page. When I get into your constituencies, which is what I usually start the conversation off with, I would like you to spend a maximum of 2 minutes, if you can. Just walk us through how is, for example, Anyaso Wutum, your roads are a major problem. The rains are here. Sometimes there's this place someone mentioned some time back, a caller. I've forgotten the name of that place. No, there's another. When you mention it, I'll know. No, they say the roads there are. No, it's not. When you mention it, I'll recall. Antieku. I forgot it, but once you Antieku, that was what the caller. Yeah. The person was very passionate about the fact that look, the roads and all of that. So, gentlemen, let's start off the conversation, and then we'll apportion time to ensure that everyone gets a piece of it. I'll start with you, Alhassan Suini, and even as you touch on your constituency, you can also tell us what it's been like. Tamale North retaining Alhassan Suini. They've had their primaries. He doesn't know his fate yet, but you've had yours.
Let me say good morning to our viewers. Good morning to the very good people of the Tamale North constituency. And once I'm starting on that note, I will want to once again convey my heartfelt, gratitude to the people of the Tamale North constituency, the chiefs, the opinion leaders, the imams, and especially the youth and women for their continuous support and prayers. It is the first time since the Fourth Republic that the constituency has allowed a member of parliament to go unopposed, and I don't take it for granted. I feel very humbled by that show of confidence, in the leadership offered in the last 6 years. I couldn't have achieved all that I have achieved, for which reason they have decided to make me go unopposed by myself. I did all of that by the grace of God and with their dedicated support, and I pledge not to take that lightly at all. Only last weekend I was in the constituency. I met with a group of women organizers at Nyanshago, and I was even further inspired by their commitment to, work not only for the development of the party, but their personal development and the constituency in general. These are women who meet every Saturday by themselves. Nobody, has put them together, but they come from all parts of the constituency just to discuss their welfare. And every week when they meet, they contribute at least 50 pesos each. Can you believe that? 50 pesos, 1 cedi. And these are branch women organizers. And they do that just so that they can support each other. They can have conversations about how to improve their welfare and the welfare of their children. I was so inspired, and I just want to commend them, their Secretary Abu and their Magajia and all the people who make it possible for the meetings to take place. I encourage other groups in the constituency to take their example. In the evening of Saturday too, I met with the youth working group of our party that has been put together to help us mobilize towards the 2024 general elections, because it's not going to be an easy task unseating a very incompetent government that is determined to continue to hold us all to ransom. And so we need to begin the work very, very
If they are
quickly.
as
And I'm
incompetent,
excited.
if they are as incompetent as you say, just to chip in,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be such a tough deal, should it?
Well, they are incompetent, but they are committed to, doing everything outside the book to remain in power. And that is why we should not take, their threat to break the eight lightly. And
right.
In Tamale North constituency, we do not intend to do that. In fact, you spoke of roads, and it is one of the biggest...
So now we're getting into what we can appreciate from the Tamale North constituency.
Yes. I mean, it's one of the biggest problems in the constituency. I mean, if you take the stretch from full end of the road to Kula, and even beyond Kula, you have the road deteriorating, to levels that are just unacceptable. This was a road that was awarded to a contractor in 2016. The contractor moved to site and started work. But when this government came into office, they suspended all road contracts, you remember, and said they were carrying out a review. They never finished that review until 2020, somewhere in 2020, when they brought a new contractor on site who only, did some few drains, and after the elections has also, abandoned that stretch. Only a couple of months ago, it was so bad that I had to get a grader to put it in shape for use by motorists. And this road is critical to the whole of Tamale, because it is the only area where you have the dumping site, the refuse dump, and so all garbage that is collected within the Tamale metropolis uses that road to dump this refuse, and yet it is left unattended to. And I have seen a contract between the Tamale Metropolitan Assembly and Zoom Lion Company that manages this refuse dump, and a portion of the contract suggests that some monies will be made available for yearly rehabilitation of that road, but that money is never put to the rehabilitation of that road. And I have raised this a number of times. And even beyond that road, if you go into our communities like Kamvli, like Ward K, if you go to Chogu, I mean, there are no roads to begin with. And where they are, they are left unattended, and they have become gullies and drains. And when it rains, people are worried about the devastation that floods can cause. So it is a general problem in this country, and there's a need for the government. I don't know if they have the capacity now, after wasting so much money on very needless things, to fix those roads. And that is the reason why we need to rescue this country and put it back to work.
For you, Dr. Adomako Kisi, what's the state of your constituency? And maybe since he's spoken about his retention, what are your prospects for Anya Sowutu going into that parliamentary primary? When they take place, what would be your expectations?
Well, let me also take the opportunity to say a good morning to Anya Sowutu constituency. And let me admit, just as Suhini has, that roads are a big deal. And I really think that within the last couple of years, I think if any of us even thought roads were not necessary, Kumewu has made it very clear to us that votes or elections, when it comes to roads, are still very, very relevant. If you look at what really transpired just recently, I have come to a realization that the powers that be are fully aware that roads matter when it comes to elections. And I think that, I hope that in the future, maybe resources might be also looked at in terms of the population. Because I always make my case that 1 kilometer in my constituency will be seen by more people than 1 kilometer in other constituencies in terms of the population that I have. But
what's your population again? How many hundreds?
324,000.
324,000.
Yes.
That's massive.
It's huge. It's huge. And it makes Kumehu look like, one electoral area in my constituency. But the key thing is that I'll use this to mention about 6 critical roads that I have issues with in my constituency. And I'll start from, in no particular order. Agape is one. Palace Town, Anya to Gonze is another road. Very critical. And then we have Fan Milk, that a lot of people call me about. And then Antieku, which of course you've mentioned. But fortunately, parts of Antieku is being fixed now. And I'm hoping that one main drain that we're hoping to work on will be done to ease the issues with the Antieku road. And then we have Odogono Senior High School to Blue Kios, another major place in Awoshi. And then Onyinase, oh my goodness, that connects to Gbawe. And if it is done, I think it could even reduce some of the congestion we have at Malam, because people can enter Gbawe through that path and not necessarily use the main road. Besides that, we also have Lobnava area, which is also screaming for roads close to Israel Police Station. And then to name another key place is the Alaji Enclave, which is in Chantai. So these are very crucial or critical things that Anya Sotum is bleeding for. And I've always thought that maybe in the future, all MPs should be road minister for like some 3 months so that you can really put in that.
I guess in those 3 months they would focus on their constituencies, like every road would be done.
What are you suggesting? That the current road minister has fixed his roads?
Oh, no, I'm just saying that,
in his constituency. Is that what you're saying?
No matter what you do, once you're a road minister, you have some leverage to up the roads.
But that's not playing fair.
That's why I said every 3 months. I didn't say the entire,
Or maybe there should be a cyclical way of having members of parliament. No, wait. So maybe there should be a by-election in every constituency every now and then. Then maybe, you saw what happened overnight in Kumehu. So when it's your by-election time, the roads will be done.
I think there should be a model. I know there is a model that determines the priority of roads, but sometimes it is not followed because of political expediency.
Yes,
and I think that is what we all have to guard against, because sometimes when you speak to the technocrats, they tell you about road leading to farming communities, to markets, to hospitals. These are this is the model that is used to determine the priority of the roads. But sometimes it is at the whims and caprices of the people in charge.
Yeah. And I really think that maybe, moving forward from a developmental standpoint, we need to divorce ourselves from the political or politicization of roads, maybe. And then...
When will we get there? We keep saying...
I don't know.
When we come on air, we like saying all these nice things, both sides, but it appears we never get to the point of...
I don't believe that development...
Divorcing our personal...
I don't think development can be depoliticized. I think
not wholly depoliticized, but the point you made about a framework. If there's a framework, why not follow the framework?
Yes, so that's the... And
you can do more. If you satisfy the basics in that framework for a particular place, and you do more elsewhere, no one has a problem, because you stuck to...
Politics can ensure that the framework is followed, and politics can also ensure that it is abused. And what we have currently is the abuse. So I don't believe in depoliticization of development. I think development gets better when it is politicized.
Properly, maybe we should say properly politicized.
Rather than because I think that in some other jurisdictions there's an agreed upon template. And that is devoid of, party politics. And I can cite many places where, there's a firm agreement on certain things. One or two can be politicized. I agree. Whether the Democrats are doing a lot more infrastructure or not. That angle. But the core work doesn't really, get swung in those directions. And I really think that, to a large extent, Ghanaians in general, we need to wake up to doing more property tax payment so that government can, in simple terms, generate the revenue required to be able to attend to these things. And I'm also of the view, and hear me out, in other places, all cell phones, that are in a certain area, that tax goes to that area, and if, for instance, looking at my population, if all the cell phones that are registered to Anyaso Tum, the premiums that they are paying, this e-levy, is to be used for that local area, you can imagine, then they will have a huge basket from which to benefit in terms of, road improvement and things like that. So in the US, your zip code, which is like your aerial code, is tied to your cell phone. If you're in Bethesda, you're paying different rates. If you're in, another part of Virginia, you're paying different rates. If you're in Maryland, so that you are paying, and it's going towards
according
the local
to
area.
Right.
And these are other things that our governance system should look at. Right. Because I think that, considering my population, if every e-levy paid, a fraction of it was really to go towards local development, I think I would have, really moved up compared to, where it is evenly distributed. And I've always also been of the case that, this idea of all members of parliament having the same kitty, amount is
You mean the common fund? Right, of course, because they have your constituencies that are the likes of Bantama, there are the likes of Ketu North, Ketu South, and then there are the smaller Ashaiman.
Yes.
That's a typical example in Accra, Ashaiman.
Again, Greater Accra region, very small. And if
so you mentioned Kumo, which may have a voter
yeah.
population of
about
17,000 thereabouts versus your voter population.
Yeah. So that is one of the aspects, and I always say that whatever noise level you're getting at a smaller constituency, mine is 10 times, and I shouldn't be given the same, chest to play with.
Point made on.
But I don't know if you have time, but you see, the bad side of all of this is that at the end of it all is the MPs who suffer the brunt of the people.
Yeah, you'll be the casualty.
Yes,
your head is on the chopping
I have
block.
said that mostly MPs suffer the brunt of government failure first. And I've even made the argument that it is the reason why the NPP lost, many constituencies in the last election, because the people, when they don't see development in their communities, when they don't see roads being done, the people to hold responsible first are usually their members of parliament. Unfortunately so. But
maybe not so unfortunately, because you also put yourselves forward as agents of development and all of that.
Yes. So that
conversation we can have.
But you see what we are doing.
And in fact, just to intervene.
Yes.
What I was going to ask next, and I hope both of you can very briefly address that. I'm asking myself, when do we need guidelines per the law or something? Where are we going to draw the line and say, look, the person you're going to vote for as a member of parliament is not going to bring you roads. In fact, that person is not responsible for bringing you roads. Yeah. There are local groups like your DCE, who is like president in your district, or your MCE, who is like president in your municipality, and others who are supposed to bring you this. When it comes to that, actually, it's not the MP. I don't know, but aren't you guys tired of the handouts and all of that and the requirements? And I'm sure you are. Aren't you looking forward to something like that?
That's where I was going to go with the argument that I began with, that all of this is as a result of the failure of local government. The idea behind how local government was supposed to work has failed. And that is why, you have a situation where MPs bear the brunt when, some of these critical development is not extended, to the people. And that's why I disagree when my brother says that the common fund should be shared based on the size of the local assembly, because the thinking was that the bigger your local assembly, the more resources. The more resources and revenue you are able to raise. And so if that has failed, it should not be corrected by using the common fund, it should be fixed.
That one,
it should be fixed. And that's why I like your suggestion relating to payment of e-levy and people living within that area and a chunk of that going into the development. So in that case, the smaller constituency will have less revenue from that. And that is why the common fund, which is supposed to be uniform, then comes to provide equity. So that's the only point of disagreement I have with you. Okay. But on the question of how we can move away from this, I think that from the situation where people expect these critical development to come from the MPs, I think, again, I will make the point that we need to ensure that we fix what is wrong with our local governance system, because that's where the solution is. Right. And part of it, in my view, is to get district chief executives elected. I have always said that when we get to that point where people put themselves up, for election as DCEs, the education will be done through the campaign that they will do. And people will get to realize the potential of the assembly to construct roads and do drains and ensure that flooding is prevented. And they will choose people to become their local president, so to speak, based on their capacity to deliver this critical development. And then at that time, I'm sure that members of parliament will now be free to some extent to focus on legislation.
Right. On that same point, Dr. Adumaku-Kisi.
Well, I think that certainly if municipal leadership is elected, and let me cite that in the Americas, a lot of appointed people are actually elected. More so than what we have here. Even up to the courts. Even up to Supreme Court itself. Even up to the police commanders.
Yeah. Yes, that's true.
Yes.
And even who becomes
superintendent for fire
in the court system, the district attorney, all those, to the highest level.
And it makes you compete, to the extent that you cannot say that, if people's cases are not being prosecuted in a good timely manner, most of the judges don't mind at all. Yeah. You understand? But if you are going to be up for another re-election or reconsideration, then you make sure that whatever cases that come to you are completed or seen through and attended to, and that you have appropriate reporting done. So I really think that, when there's competition, efficiency, productivity increases. That is just the norm. But if all jobs are such that you get appointed and you answer to just the person that appoints you, then that is where
that's where the handicap is.
But I also think that oversight responsibility, and that comes to all of us. If oversight works well, then we can literally query like local governance and say, how come that these people have been deprived X amount? If 100K is going towards one municipal and 10K has gone to, then we can query. Yeah. And that also comes with the oversight duties. Imagine if road minister comes and he sits in front of us and realize that, hey, this district got X amount more than the other district. Why? And then he has to answer. If he doesn't have a very good reason for that, logical reason, then we say that, hey, my man, you have to go because you've as it is not been fair in your distribution of the resources.
So point made. We have quite a way to go when it comes to resolving some of these problems. But at the district level, the local level as well, there's a lot more that we ought to be doing. Once you enhance the capacity of the local level, it has a bottom-up effect. Unfortunately, we've had our own systems. I don't know whether it's time to revisit those issues in the 1992 Constitution of Ghana. But let's get into some economics-related matters. We know that the first tranche of the IMF cash, $600 million, hit the central bank's accounts, and since then there have also been some talks in respect of the World Bank and some sums of money they're going to be giving us for developmental purposes, some of them related to flooding. But some things that stand out. Apart from the $600 million that we've received, you would think that the expectation was that it would stabilize the cedi to a large extent. That has not happened. In fact, just about over a week ago, the cedi was selling, in fact, the dollar was selling at a little over 12 cedis It has fallen a bit from the last time I checked. It fell to around 10.97, and I think it's been fluctuating. You get it. So in that regard, the business community is still complaining. The cost of items is still rather high. Inflation is still biting here and there. In terms of expectations when it comes to the IMF money, we knew it wasn't going to solve our problems. But in terms of the short to medium term effects, have you seen that? I'll start with you, Alhassan.
Well, I'm not particularly surprised. I think that the expectations were a bit too high from some quarters.
From which quarters? Government's quarters?
From government quarters, especially. They thought that they spoke like they did during the passage of the e-levy, as if a deal with the IMF,
the Holy
passage
Grail
of the e-levy, was the Holy Grail. It was going to be the solution to the economic crisis that we were going through. The president, the president later came in his address to admit that, look, guys, this is not going to solve our problem. And we in the opposition said it repeatedly, even before the deal was signed, that, look, only in 2022, last year, the Bank of Ghana, broke all the rules and extended to government over $3 billion. By printing about 44 billion plus Ghana cedis for the government. And if that didn't do anything, like we say, it's not unconfirmed. It's, in fact, the Bank of Ghana, through their own releases, have admitted and rather, describe it as overdrafts. And it's only in Ghana that you'll have overdrafts running into over 18 months. So I'm saying that's why I said they broke all the rules. And the IMF team, in their report, has actually, condemned this practice. And so it's not unconfirmed. But I'm saying that if you had that, like we say in Dagbani, if you walk through the rain and you do not get wet, a bucket of water poured on you will not make any difference. I mean, if you had 3 billion, in 1 year, and it did not make any impact, you didn't expect $600 million and I think 300 or so by the end of the year to make any significant impact. I mean, our problem is deep-seated, and that is why sometimes I feel that the government should be honest with the people more. It is true that honest.
But the president has said that we're in dire straits. The president has said, in fact, in his last COVID-19 address, the 29th one, he admitted that this isn't where he would have wanted, things to get to. That indeed they did not want to go back to the IMF, but their hands were tied.
The government is admitting, the president and his government are admitting to the dire straits because it is obvious. What is not obvious is what they are not admitting to. It is not, and the depth of the problem is not obvious, and how we got here is not obvious. And if they say that when you fall, you do not concentrate on where you have fallen, you look at where you tripped. So if we get to understand how we got to where we are, then we will understand the enormity of work that is required for us to get out of the mess that we find ourselves. But the government is only admitting to the obvious. The fact that you and I are going through economic challenges cannot be denied by anybody, and that is why they are compelled to make that admission. But what they are not admitting to is the fact that this decay began long before COVID and the Russia-Ukraine war. This decay, and it has also even been confirmed by the IMF, that the decay began before the Russian and Ukraine war. It only exacerbated, the situation. But if we do not make that admission and get a buy-in, that is why it is still not even too late for the government to have, a national, a conference of a sort where we will bring all stakeholders together to assess the level of damage that we have done to the economy and how we can get out of it, because
something like the Peduase,
something like the Senchi kind of thing. Yes, it is critical that you have everybody appreciating how we got here, Because that appreciation is what will lead to everybody understanding the contribution he or she has to make for us to get out of this place. But you speak to people even in government, key sector ministers, some of them cabinet ministers, and they themselves do not even know what is happening. They do not know how things got this bad and what is being done to get out of the situation. It is as if the decisions are left to a select few in government. And that is worrying.
Speaking of a select few, let me just find out though. I mean, fuel prices are also becoming they're inching up again. I was really looking forward to, realistically, it won't solve our problems, but you're hoping that the dollar to CD performance will get much better because look, if you're paying any kinds of fees in foreign currency and a friend of mine had to do that for a year, it was torture.
Yeah.
Great British pounds. Yeah. She just ended her dental work in March.
Yesterday,
so you can imagine what
a friend called me from the constituency. Hajj, people are preparing to go for Hajj and they are in search of foreign currency. A friend called me yesterday from Tamale. All the places they went to, they couldn't get the dollar below 13 Ghana cedis for $1. But
were they going to Forex Bureau?
All the places they went to.
Streets.
Of course, the Forex bureaus are licensed to operate, so if they went to the Forex Bureau, how many people can actually walk to the Bank of Ghana and get Forex? Yeah,
I'm not talking about.
Yeah, it's a Forex Bureau, and the Forex Bureau, and everywhere they went to, it was not less than 13 Ghana cedis, and those are some of the things that you are faced with as a member of parliament. So then you were called to see what you can do. What can you do with that situation?
Yeah, I was actually curious. What are you able to? But unless you're trading for it,
that's the problem we are faced with. So the situation is not getting better with this $600 million, and I don't expect it to get better.
It has stabilized a few things, though. What we are not seeing is that real impact on our currency and the cost of items. Basically, that is it. We do not know whether when the second tranche comes in, which is at the latter end of the year, by which time the brunt will still have been felt by a lot. But even as you talk about the economy, the realities of it, there's that renewed push. Ken Ofori-Atta, do you recall? That he had to go. The IMF deal has been secured. In fact, recently I heard a little boom about it and I said, oh, it's not dead, is it? What's your take on that?
So let me start out with one key thing. The basics of economy management hasn't changed.
Right.
And I don't know when the NDC would wake up to some realities, because Suhini here has repeated that we don't know how we got here. But I really think that, B. Mali says it nicely. You have to know your past to know where you're going. And in very simple terms, I can say on authority that we know how we got here, to a large extent. And to be very fair to Ghanaians, the truth is that we've embarked on very bold and audacious projects in this country, never before seen. I can cite the likes of, interchanges. I can cite the likes of hospitals, and let me also state one thing, that if you go to Komfo today, the maternity block that is being built is a huge thing. It's by itself, by all standards, a hospital on its own. And other people in this country think that if you're adding on to an existing infrastructure, then you're not doing much. But I beg to differ. If you go to Kolebu, the urology center that is being built is a huge investment. And although it is happening at Kolebu, where we all know what Kolebu stands for and where Kolebu has been all through the years, you cannot discount the fact that a major project is happening on the soils of Kolebu. When you go to the likes of Adesadel, when you go to the likes of Presec, when you go to Rosec, Wesley Girls, infrastructure has been added, and you cannot discount it. If you go to the STEM schools that have been built, it is a mind-blowing infrastructure. And these are very costly. And when we say we don't know how we got here, in terms of the loans that you and I have signed in Parliament, because government cannot spend any money without it going through Parliament to a large extent. I mean, and I really think that members of Parliament have to, come to terms with the fact that every major project in this country has been read through, debated, discussed in Parliament, either the Finance Committee or in the, we all, agree. The last major one is this road leading to Nsawam, which you and I are privy to. When the loan agreement came, we all signed for it. So I really would beg that, those realities are put to the Ghanaian people so that we all come to terms with the fact that, listen, when all these projects were discussed and debated, all of Ghana saw it. And it's not like it was done in the dark. Now, the other thing is that where we are in terms of COVID, which some people don't think COVID was adverse, in terms of Russia, Ukraine, which some people don't think is existent, I can say...
I don't think anyone thinks it's non-existent. It's the extent to which we can hold on to them and claim they have buffeted our economy to the point where we are where we are. That's the concern.
But as you can see, I've made mention of numerous projects that we've done. I mean, for my constituency as we speak, this is the first time we are going to enjoy this district hospital, the Agenda 111. And this is the biggest investment government has made in my constituency.
What's the progress on that, though?
I mean, per what the municipal chief executive was telling me the other day, we're above 50% of the work. And that is...
Have you seen the project?
Oh, yes. I have pictures.
Where exactly is it in your...
This is actually right close to the municipal, and it's at Antieku, more towards Anya. And fascinating. And
one of these days we'll be coming there with our cameras.
Come and see. And for me, I appreciate the fact that, if not at all, some portions of the cake has come to my constituency. Now, we should all not discount the fact that Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo took on very big projects, very big projects, and that has contributed to these issues. Now, when you talk of roads, it may not be so obvious to some people, but I can cite a few that I have seen. I mean, I really am so happy when I'm going to the Eastern Corridor now.
Right.
In terms of the dual roads from Nsawam up to Apedra. Fantastic. It brings me such relief when I'm driving. And I'm happy that it has been proven now that accidents have even reduced, although there are accidents on that road, just by the fact that you don't overtake, and meet an incoming car. So these are positives that we should not discount. Now, the amount that has come is a drop. And if Ghana really, really wants to take something serious, I think that importation of certain things like orange juice, which we all can, have done in this country, ought to be looked at. There are a myriad of things that, as a country, toothpick, that if we want to be very deliberate in our intention, in terms of cutting down our dependence on imports, then we'll really be working on this dollar exchange. Because in very simple terms, the strength of the cedi depends on how much we move outside this country, more so than what comes in. And I think that we all have to curb our appetite for foreign, items. And one beautiful thing Russia has done, even now,
right,
that they are at war, they have substituted a lot of things that they were importing for local items. And this substitution of, for instance, sugar that would have imported for maybe sugar made in this country, and a host of things would lead the way. And I would always commend Nigeria for what they've done with rice, and if you look at the chunk of rice we import in this country, and then we claim that we are really, trying to cut down on our exchange rates, then we must strengthen our agricultural sector so that nobody, and I mean nobody, will be importing tomato paste, nobody will be importing tomato sauce. A chunk of our money is spent on this. Every wache joint in this country is contributing literally to our forex.
Right.
And
these are things that when the president spoke about import substitution and all of that, or when we're on the ropes, and we still are on the ropes, it makes no sense that we import so much when it comes. At least I know for rice, there is that collaboration that is ongoing. I don't think it is the solution by and large. You look at the Nigerian example; it was radical. And if you look at the falls, I've done one of my blunt thoughts on that. If you look at the fall within a year of consumption of foreign rice to local rice, it's not something. It's not rocket science. And this is Nigeria; they are next door neighbors. It can be done. But on the back of our economic woes, there's also that renewed push when it comes to Ken Ofori-Atta.
Yes.
Very quickly on that. Let me bring in Al-Hassan Suili, because I also want his take on on that specific
talk on that one.
Yes. So I will address that. But when I heard my brother talking about big infrastructure, I was just thinking to myself. I mean, in the health sector, for example, is there any infrastructure that is completed and put to use bigger than the UGMC, bigger than the Rich Hospital in this country, bigger than the Tamale?
But I think he also made a point
bigger than the Upper East Regional Hospital. The fact that I'm still counting. I said the Upper East Regional Hospital.
Urology.
Can I finish? Can I finish?
Bigger than Rich.
Can I finish?
Let me make you aware.
Can I finish?
That if you go to Kolebu now, the urology building is bigger than Rich.
All right. So let him make
the maternity building,
please,
bigger than Rich.
Please, okay. I'll address that. I'm saying that. Is there any project in the health sector that they have done bigger than all these that I have mentioned, from the Upper East Regional Hospital to the Tamale Teaching Hospital to the Rich Hospital to the UGMC and all of it? Have they done that? And in the roads and highway sector, is there a project bigger than the T3, than the whole airport, than the Kumasi airport, than the Tamale airport? Have they done any projects in the highway sector bigger than these? If you are talking about education, the e-blogs are there for you to see. And yet, the interesting thing is how much was used to do that? How much came to government around that time that these ambitious projects were undertaken? And yet, even as that government embarked on these projects with little resources, our economy was not in this dire straits. That's what you need to remember. To whom much is given, much is expected. And you are talking about a government that inherited 2 additional oil wells that were put, that were put together by the previous government for them, making 3 wells from which they got their revenue from. You're talking about expansion of the port.
On that aspect, we can always talk about the fact that, post the Kufuor administration, when the NDC came into power, you came and benefited from, in 2010, from the oil business.
That's not a comparison I'm making. That's not a comparison I'm making. I'm merely saying that as we go on, there are more benefits that can come. Yes, I am not comparing. Good. That's the point. I'm not comparing the Mahama Mills regime to the Kufuor regime. That's not what I'm doing. I'm comparing the Mahama Mills regime to the Nana Akufo-Addo regime. And I'm saying that under the Mills Mahama regime, they inherited oil fine from the Kufuor regime, which they put to use. Can I finish? Which they put to use. One well they put to use and did all these ambitious projects that they did and has been put to use by the people of Ghana. Now you have 3 wells, so you should expect more. And when you get them more, your economy shouldn't be in these dire straits. Yet we have a situation where we don't have them more, and yet our economy is in this mess. And so when I hear him talk about they have embarked on all these, I'm wondering, where are they compared to the previous and compared to the resources that were used to do that and compared to the health of the economy at the time, even when the government of the day did that. But the point about
10
that's a lie.
UGMS.
Forgive me. That's a lie. We know the budget. No, check the budget. We know how much is spent on free SHS. That's a lie.
You know how many
we're spending? So please, we're spending a few billion.
Please, don't even go there. Don't even go there. Don't go there.
Or you'd not admit that the free SHS money
go there.
Would have built you another age.
So
you would not admit to that.
So let's talk about the fact that even you agree that the economy has been so mismanaged by the man in charge of the economy.
Let's talk about the man in charge.
That's what I'm going to.
That's the point.
That's what I'm saying.
Can you let me finish the sentence? That when you're done, I don't know why you ran away from Ken Ofori-Atta and threw it to him. I'll come back to you.
I ran away. I haven't run away.
You parried it to him. I want to find out what the stance of the majority is. So when he's done, I'll come back to you.
I'm saying that all this argument is needless because even they agree with us, the common people and opposition, that the man who has managed our economy has done such a bad job that they want him changed. They agree. They agree. It is just that they have lost
they agree to. You know that.
What else? What were their reasons?
They say
what
that
were their reasons?
He is not good for the optics. He's been labeled, he's been branded. There's so much that has happened, and that is not necessarily because he was reckless. You remember the parliamentary committee sitting, and it's not that he's been reckless, but he's been tagged in a certain light, and so let someone else come and take over. That's their stance. They don't agree that they've been reckless. They don't agree.
I mean, so that is part of the problem. That's why I said in our first conversation, in my first submission, that there's a need for the government to be honest about how we got here, and together we can all appreciate the roles we have to play to get out.
Right.
Because you cannot have credit to ABA, water in your mouth, and be blowing to rekindle fire. You cannot say the man is so good and has done such a fantastic job, but because he contradicted himself on IMF, he must go. What logic? How reasonable is such a call? When the man is so good and has done such a fantastic job, you want him changed just because he said we won't go to IMF and we have gone to IMF.
But
nobody's going to buy that. So the truth that they are running away from is that they feel the pinch of the recklessness and the mismanagement. Their constituents are attacking them because things are not working. And that is why they were compelled to agree with us and to demand that the president should change him. Unfortunately, the president, like he does even to everyone, that's how he became president in the first place, tricked them.
Have you been tricked?
No.
Are you still looking forward to ousting Ken Ofori-Atta?
Listen, I think
you say you've not been tricked.
Let me be very clear here. The majority we had our meeting with the president, and the arrangement was that he would review the decision about Ken going or not when the IMF deal is concluded. And as it stands, I think that Suhini has to admit to the fact that we are parliamentarians, and our duty is to make a case to the full extent possible. And I think that if he'll be fair, to the extent that even with the party in power, the majority leadership and members made their case. And I think the final decision rests in the bosom of the president. And
you made your case, but when you had the opportunity to put, maybe not pen to paper, but to put that commitment, bring it to bear, you chickened out.
No, the path was different. And I must be very clear here. We agreed that it was necessary that he goes, but the path they chose was not...
Which goes back to what I was saying. Fine.
Yes. So it's not that we chickened out.
No.
And he has to agree to the terms that we said that the justifications you were given were not in sync with ours. Ours were very key that, listen, there's a man that didn't want us to go to IMF. The president had to actually make a case for it. And in that sense, we felt that there are two key things we said: credibility, and confidence of the Ghanaian people had waned. And in finance, when you lose those two things, it's difficult. It's difficult. Those were our claim, not all the things that the NDC were making. So the argument was very simple, that we felt that credibility and confidence were low. And that was it. And beyond that, as it stands now, I think that, listen,
So how do you lose the two in managing an economy?
In all fairness, I think that as it stands now, members of parliament, we've made our case.
How do you
the president,
how do you lose confidence and
the power is in the appointing
when you are managing
authority.
An economy?
Please let him.
It's
really,
all right.
I don't get it.
The power is in the appointing authority, and as it stands now,
so you feel as legislators on the majority side, you've done what ought to be done
to the full extent.
to the full extent.
And the thing is, we have a country to keep afloat. We are legislative.
Can the economy only be kept afloat with Ken Ofori-Atta? I mean,
Not necessarily.
You have the men, remember?
Not necessarily.
You have the men.
I agree with you.
Area boys.
There are many people.
You say they are what?
Area boys.
Who can, as it is, And the other thing too is that, in reading Black Swan, a book, sometimes we give too much credit, or we put a lot of blame on somebody when there's a cataclysmic issue, the likes of a tsunami, that then takes off, and we fail to recognize that even if whoever had the Holy Grail was seated in Ken Ofori-Atta's seat, with the
circumstances,
if the authority on finance in the world, people in the likes of John Stigler and others were in that seat, the same thing would have happened.
You're saying that even if the likes of, and I'm just bringing this in on the lighter note, Professor Steve Hank of the Johns Hopkins, who has been on the back of this administration, even if he had been opposed, probably
there's that argument.
Any different.
There's the argument.
Okay, all right.
So I really think that, we have to weigh all of these things. But like I said, in summary, that the onus is on the president to make that decision.
Do you want the majority side, from where we are, do you want, Mr. President, to still go ahead and find a replacement for Ken Ofori-Atta? Are you still going to push for that?
I think that this is one of the things that we haven't had a meeting again about this. I mean, in all fairness, and I cannot talk for the...
What's your personal stance?
My personal stance is that I think that there was an arrangement, and the onus is on the president to make a decision.
So to stick to the arrangement and go ahead with ousting Ken Ofori-Atta?
No, the arrangement was that, when the IMF is done, we'll have...
Exactly, it comes back to the same thing.
Yes, so as it stands now, I think that, if some things have changed, maybe he can brief us. If some things have changed.
Doc,
yeah.
Should Ken Ofori-Atta go? This was the deal. The deal was he sees us through the IMF deal. Yeah. We've got the deal. Is it time for him to go?
I wouldn't say yes to that.
No.
I
thought you just said that the president should stick to the plan. That was the plan.
Listen to me.
That was why you agreed to the president.
Listen to me carefully. I think that the final decision rests in the president's bosom.
I will advise the president not to let
As it stands now, if there's something new, he can let us know.
All right. Yeah. I would like us to get into other matters, but very quickly on the economy. There's another matter that has come up that also borders on the supposed recklessness of your party, which has also impacted their administration. There's always that banter, but in recent times, the World Bank country director, Pierre Laporte, has said that the IPP agreements signed under John Dramani Mahama were terrible for our economy. And Dr. Kwabena Donkor, who was then power minister, has come out to roundly debunk that, saying that it is bereft of the facts and all of that. But this is the claim that no mean an entity, the World Bank, is pointing to. How do you respond to that? Because they would often tell you that, look, it's also on the back of some of your recklessness from the past that they are dealing with this situation, the NPP. Very quick thoughts on that. I want us to...
Yeah, the World Bank depends on information that is presented to it by a government. And so, as much as I will not fault the World Bank country director for his mispronouncements on this matter, I will expect that he will go beyond the information that is provided by the government to get himself more educated on the subject before he makes any public pronouncements again. Because, look, the country faced energy challenges during the NDC regime. And these were energy challenges that the NDC did not create, but inherited. That fact has to be established.
With oil fields.
Yes, it inherited, because the experts at the time, in fact, predicted long before the time that because of the low level of investment in the sector, we're going to get to that point where we'll have a crisis. Previous governments didn't do anything about it, and so we got to the crisis when the NDC was in power. The president then who I respect so much because of the way he even approached this issue, identified the 3 problems together with the experts. 1, there was the financial problem. 2, there was the fuel problem. And 3, there was the generation problem. So he set out to fix the generation problem through
capacity.
the generation problem through the emergency power, plants that were brought in. And you do know that in negotiating agreements in an emergency situation, it is sometimes not the best time to negotiate, an agreement. So definitely, one will ask himself, could we have gotten better if we were not in an emergency? And I will say yes. If you are not in an emergency,
very key point,
you will get better. So we had those, arrangements in an emergency situation. But the fact, however, is that those arrangements ensured that we got out of the energy crisis that we find ourselves in. Then the financial problem was fixed with the introduction of, ESLA, the ESLA fund. Now, the World Bank Country Director needs to educate himself more on what the intention of ESLA was and whether that has been applied.
Right.
If that was applied, would we be where we are today? If the World Bank Country Director educates himself on that, I'm sure he will be able to appreciate the issues better. The fuel problem was solved with the fast tracking of the Ghana Gas Infrastructure Project.
Right.
Which ensured that we now had our own fuel in this country. But I will just want to reiterate the point that Dr. Kobna Donkor makes. And it has to do with the fact that even as we speak, Ameri, which was even negotiated under an emergency situation, is the lowest in terms of, thermal generation tariffs. How much we pay for thermal generation in this country. It is even lower than Asogli that came in long before, the power crisis. So what the World Bank Country Director said is not borne by the facts. And what I am tempted to agree with is the analysis of Kobna Donkor, who says that at the time that you negotiated to pay, say, $4, to pay $1 for, a unit of power, the dollar was 4 cedis. Today, that same dollar is about 11 to 12 cedis. And so if that, and then the bigger problem is that you have misapplied the tax handle that was supposed to help you deal with some of these problems. And so here is the case, your budget has increased as a result of your reckless management of the economy. That has because it's reckless. That has led to the depreciation of your cedi, and it is part of the recklessness that led us to collateralizing the ESLA proceeds, for example. So clearly, I think that the World Bank Country Director was speaking based on information provided by the government, and I think he should go beyond just the government of the day's information and better educate himself.
Just to cap off, though, I'm not going to elicit any answers on this, but we heard Mr. President say that we were in dire straits. Of course, we needed the IMF bid. And then all of a sudden, we also heard, and on the back of this, we'll now be able to go to the back to the capital markets and all of that. That was, I don't know where that was coming from, but I think we've had a conversation on that, so it should be fine. But let's talk governance as we, in the next 15 or so minutes, we cap off on the conversation. We have and I would like to go back to this, and hopefully we don't have to walk that road again, the Domelevo situation. I will not belabor it. What is your candid reaction to what has happened? And we'll take a swipe at a few other issues when it comes to governance. But I'll start with you, Doc.
So which one did you want me to touch on?
Domelevo.
Well, in hindsight, I think it was a low point in governance. I mean, and I think that I would side with the Supreme Court justices in terms of this decision. And for lack of a better word, I think that he will have some compensation for this, and Ghana would lose some money in terms of the compensation that Domelevo will get. And
in terms of obviously what we could have got from him if he had been at post.
Well,
everything that has happened.
I would agree with you. So as it stands, governance is also a learning institution, and I'm sure that with this, this mistake will not be repeated by any other government, other measures will be put in place in terms of the checks and balances before any official in that capacity is allowed to go on, let me say, leave indefinite. But be it as it may, I also think that in this case, the NDC, can admit to the fact that the justices are very fair-minded, because they've shown to be fair-minded, and if even they had doubts, which sometimes they do, this is one classic case that I would always cite as proof that the justices are not necessarily just doing what government.
So I see where you're going. In other words, there have been a string of decisions that have seemed to go against his party,
yes.
the NDC.
Yes,
and you're basically saying that with this you could say Domelevo was brought in at the twilight of Mahama's administration, but we've seen same from the MPP into the NDC administration. So let's not go back there. But this was someone who was merely doing the charges that the state, fulfilling the charges that the state had given him. In fact, for a long time, we hadn't seen an Auditor General surcharging, doing. In fact, we had not seen it in the Fourth Republic. He was the first person who came and started enforcing.
Rambo style.
Well, whichever style you would say Daniel Domelevo went commando, about it. So there are issues there about how the cookie crumbled. But the court has ruled. The question, though, with the time, some have said that when there are issues from the Electoral Commission and the rest, it can rule within the twinkling of an eye. 2 weeks, it could have been done with this. But we sat down, allowed this entire process to happen 3 years on, about 3 years on, and we brought a ruling. To what effect?
Well,
after all this time had lapsed.
I think the decisions are not the same.
I'm not saying they are the same, but looking at the degree of importance, you would have felt that the court would expeditiously deal with this.
The court did a smart thing in the sense that the rift, and you see, he would admit to the fact that when there's almost like a family contention and people are looking for divorce, the court has a way of delaying so that there's hope of reconciliation.
I do not think for someone
there's hope for reconciliation.
Who also dabbles in these legal circles. I don't see the correlation. In family circles, yes, sometimes it is done to tarry, and people can change their minds.
Employee disgruntlement.
People can change their minds at a point, and it is intentionally done. But in this instance, where's the correlation?
No. In this case, that let me put it very clearly, that there was a relationship in terms of an employee, quote unquote, of the state and the government, in that sense, the executive. And I think that in the wisdom of the judges, they felt that coming to a conclusion on this matter, considering even the aftermath, for instance, if he was brought back like a year after he had gone on that leave, who knows the impact that it would have on this country in terms of, relationship between the executive and the accountant and controller. So I think that in the wisdom, and they felt that if the benefits outweigh the cost in terms of the benefits of him having this peace of mind, and now, thanks to God, he has even another appointment, so he's working somewhere else, and the cost to the state, because these things are state decisions.
Okay,
so
I think
it
the
was
thrust
in the
of your
interest of the state, that they looked at and arrived at this decision, which still, as it is, shows that they have made a decision very much at variance with what the president's...
that also leaves us with a sort of template that moving forward, and it is hoped that no other executive presidents will come and repeat similar exercises. It's been touted, though, that under Mahama, there was a similar happening. I've just forgotten the particular person involved, but there was something akin to this, but not much noise was made about it because maybe this person was not performing, so to speak, like Daniel Domelevo. But while you address that, I know you have a take quickly. I also want you to address Green Ghana Day. It's 3 days away. We're talking governance. And for me, I've asked questions about how much we've been pumping into these exercises, how many trees we have actually saved and all of that. And on the back of, I don't know whether you watched our news this morning, Itiwa, and still the campaign there, because it's one of the last that we have when it comes to such zones on the back of Galamsey, again, governance. So you can address this. I know you have some brief thoughts there, and then I want you to go into Green Ghana Day and all
put
of
the
that.
two together because I have.
Oh, I know. So this will be reactions, and I want you
but,
to take those on.
on the issue of Dumolevo, I think that yes, I agree with Doc that it is a low in our governance. Unfortunately, it is one of many lows under this Nana Akufo-Addo Bawumia government. I mean, they have simply turned so many things upside down. I mean, things we thought a government didn't have the capacity to do, they have done overboard. And sometimes I just wonder how democratic watchers sit by and watch this government abuse every, good governance tenets that we know. I just can't, for the life of me, understand. And the justifications about the delay is neither here nor there. I think that it was uncalled for. It should have been, dismissed and dispatched with long ago, especially because we all know and agree that justice delayed is justice denied. And I just like the way Dumolevo has taken this. And I think that Doc must be careful when he uses this as, an example of how the judiciary is unbiased. The NDC had no interest whatsoever in this matter beyond just being citizens of Ghana and consent. NDC didn't have any interest in this matter.
Really?
And so for you to say that, it's like, okay, the NDC has also gotten some victory. It's rather a slam and a damnation of the judiciary, because the NDC really had no interest whatsoever beyond just the fact that we are all Ghanaians and we are concerned that our institutions, and people leading our institutions were treated in the manner that the government used executive power, to treat Dumolevo. So I don't think that it's a very good example to use. But I think that the judiciary themselves must take note of the reaction to this ruling. They must take note of the reaction to this ruling.
Yeah.
And then be guided. And I am sure if they are guided, they will enjoy the bipartisan, general support when they give out rulings that sits with the conscience of the people.
Right.
This particular ruling is one example that should guide them, that it doesn't matter even if the government is unhappy with the ruling, they can't challenge it because it would have been a ruling that makes sense and that sits with the conscience and the aspirations of the people. After all, justice emanates from the people. And so it must be dispensed in such a way that the people see it being delivered without any manipulation. So I just hope that you'll be guided. I wish we could speak about Jackie Quayson.
Actually, that's one of the concluding matters. So let's just let me do the questioning and you do that.
On Green Ghana, because I wanted to relate this to the Quayson case, but
okay, then if you want to draw linkages, then do it. Since it's still in the judiciary, then let's just go to it.
I mean, last night I spent, some part of my bedtime reading the 35-page ruling. And for the life of me, I couldn't, look, even before I got to the defendant's counsel, statement of case, I had thought that should be sensible, even though I'm not a lawyer. I mean, just the opening, I thought that, but for example, you make a case of the Australian, ruling, Australian court ruling, and you quote the exact provision that guided that ruling. That said that the person was not qualified to stand for elections. That's what the law says, that you are not qualified to stand for elections when you owe allegiance. And then you equate that to say you are not qualified to be an MP. I mean, and so I thought that, but that's not the same. They may be similar, but that's not the same. And so I wasn't surprised when I got to the, statement of case by the counsel of the first defendant, that the judge was making the case that you are not comparing like terms. Because the texts, for example, if the framers of the Constitution wanted to debar anyone from standing elections to be elected as member of parliament, they would have said so. But they did not say that you are disqualified from standing elections if you are not able to meet ABC. They said you are disqualified from being a member of parliament.
Right.
And the processes leading up to election does not qualify you to be a member of parliament. But, so sometimes I will just repeat that the judiciary should be guided by the ruling of Dumoulin, the case involving Dumoulin, and be encouraged and empowered to make rulings that make sense and that sit with the generality of the population, and not those kind of rulings that just leave you wondering whether you are a citizen based on your birth certificate or your passport. And so if you are not privileged enough to own a passport, then your citizenship can be questioned.
Very briefly, in just a few seconds, just tell me this. Are we, by these utterances, also suggesting, without saying, that when any particular party is in power, your party is in power, the judiciary plays along with you, and when his party is in power, the judiciary plays along with them? Is that the suggestion?
I haven't said so, and that's not what I am campaigning for. I am saying that the judiciary at all times must live above reproach. Its rulings must make sense and must be accepted by the generality of Ghanaians. Because you see, the law is a moral thing, and it
well, not necessarily. In fact,
it's not necessarily.
It has nothing to do with it.
No, it does. It has morality.
Okay,
in
so
law has morality.
It has a bit of that.
So maybe I didn't put it, but
a lot of the time,
what
rulings are nothing.
Yes, the point I'm seeking to make is that the law stems from the people, and that's why the Constitution itself says that it should be dispensed in the name of the people.
It must be reflective.
It must be reflective of the thinking.
So.
Yes.
Quick thoughts on that. Quick thoughts.
I also think that, in all fairness, when you are taking any case to the Supreme Court, do double checking of the case you are taking. Because in all honesty, some cases did not merit going to the Supreme Court. And I can give many examples. And I think that the opposition party or the minority should also sometimes, I'm pleading with them, should double check what they want to go and present. Because some of the things, and I can cite one.
Are you saying they are sloppy? Is that what you're trying to say?
I wouldn't use the word sloppy, but I'll use the word double checking in the sense that you should be careful about your, checking your expectations, one, and then the end game. Do I really have a case? Does this case merit going there? And what is it going to do, if not just maybe for propaganda, what is it really going to do for us? And I think that the onus is on them in terms of their legal team, political strategy people, to come to terms with the fact that not all cases necessarily have to...
So the merits of every case.
Yes.
All right. Gentlemen, to wrap the conversation, 2 quick questions. I started on the Green Ghana Day, vis-a-vis Galamsey. And so in one breath, we are planting trees. In another, we are polluting the environment. I also want to add up this bit. It's really passionate. It's really dear to me. It's something I'm very passionate about. Are you aware that, sanitary pads, they are considered some sort of luxury? There are some taxes on them. So you have 20% and 15%. I think the 20% is the import tax also, and then 15% for VAT. That's a whopping 35%. Well, you have neighboring countries that have done away with them. Nigeria, Tanzania, you have Rwanda, you have Kenya, among other countries. No taxes on them. Why should we tax periods? Do you get the problem? And look at the cost of them. The other day I was saying, when I shared my blunt thoughts, I actually purchased for some people who can afford to do that. Do you get it? And the cost of that, so I know firsthand, because I have to make some purchases for some people who can't afford them. Vulnerable people. Why should we have that?
I would have preferred we put...
So I'm putting it to both of you and hoping, since I'm not in Parliament, that maybe you can push out your voice to some of these.
Alcohol instead of sanitary pads. I would have wished that, this be transferred to that instead. And
I know there are some taxes already on those. Some of those four taxes that
I'm saying that
you brought back
from a medical standpoint, in terms of the benefit of sanitary pads and the adverse impact of alcohol and cigarette on us, I would rather prefer that this burden on sanitary pads be transferred onto cigarettes and alcohol so that the sanitary pads are left alone. That's just my point.
I'm putting the challenge to both of you. Is this something you feel you could take up in Parliament, talk about? I'm not in Parliament, but you have the voice in Parliament. Is this something you could take up?
Now that you've reminded me about this, I can make a statement on sanitary pads. It's something that from time to time I buy for third-year students in JSS in support, just as you're saying, and I think that it's not a luxury. And all men who appreciate women should take this serious, that sanitary pads are not luxurious items and is a necessary evil for women who, do this ritual every month.
It's through no choice of their own. And you know why? Recently at Love FM, there was a lady who came on board, much younger at the time. She didn't have the wherewithal, the means. Mm-hmm. She fell on this person who aided her, eventually had relations with her, impregnated her, infected her with HIV. All because she did not have
sanitary pad.
I don't know whether you'd also take it up from your end in Parliament, what your thinking is on that. And then we wrap on Green Ghana. It's a wrap on this conversation.
Yeah, I think I feel the way you feel. I think it's criminal that we are taxing periods in this country, especially if you look at the population data and the fact that we tend
51%
exactly
female,
and many of them are also in deprived communities. It's just unacceptable that we make condoms cheaper than pads. I think that it is a travesty of justice, and I think that as a country it must be a blot on our conscience. And I am for the removal of taxes on such items. I don't think that it makes sense at all. It is a natural occurrence, and people don't have a choice. It is not as if they can choose not to use sanitary pads. Yes, there may be other alternatives, but how healthy are those alternatives that are available? And even how comfortable are those alternatives? And I think that it is the reason why we must not.
Will you vocalize it in Parliament for us? I've got one from the majority, and I'll keep doing this.
I'm doing that. I'm doing that, and so I think that when the need arises for a vote to be taken in Parliament, you should be rest assured that I'll be voting on the side of a removal of the taxes on there.
So I just want us to do this. Our time is actually up, but I want us to take a quick swipe
because I know.
No. I'll let you go ahead.
It's actually two codes. One is the Australian law. It says any person who is under, and listen to the way it is called, is under any acknowledgement of allegiance, obedience, or adherence to a foreign power, or is a subject or a citizen or entitled to the rights of or privileges of a subject or a citizen of a foreign power, shall be incapable of being chosen or sitting as a senator or a member of the House of Representatives. So you see, it makes it clear that you are incapable of being chosen, you cannot sit as a senator, and you cannot sit at the House of Representatives. So they capture
from all
strands. But then you look at our law, which is used to mean the same thing as this, and it simply says that subject to the provisions of this article, a person shall not be qualified to be a member of Parliament unless a person shall not be qualified to be a member of Parliament. And yet we stretch it to mean that a member of Parliament begins at the nomination stage, and so at that point this law kicks in. Yes, there may be precedents on the Zenalta case, but if that was not expansive enough, that is why we say the law grows. And that's why we say the Supreme Court is the only jurisdiction, is the only court that can change its mind.
Right.
So what is wrong?
Unfortunately, we'll not have time now to get into the Green Ghana bit. Maybe some.
But I think Green Ghana is a criminal enterprise that has been set up by this government just to loot our money. It is a criminal enterprise.
What's your evidence on that?
Look, clearly, the trees, the number of trees we are told that are, planted are never accounted for. What is accounted for is the money that is paid. We never get to see the trees. Yes, and so it means that it is owed and it will be paid. But where are the trees?
All right.
It's a criminal enterprise that has just been set up to loot
final comments,
our hard-earned currency and to further destroy our forests. Look, you'll be shocked that Aisha Wang actually has a concession in this country, a forest concession.
Wait, are you saying
it's just a criminal enterprise?
Just hold a second for me. Has a concession now?
Yes.
As we speak.
Yes.
Where?
It is before Parliament for ratification. It is before Parliament for ratification.
Where?
In this country.
Where?
I will give you the evidence if you are interested.
I'll look forward to the
last
evidence.
words. Today, Ghana should know that Dumso was an emergency and COVID too was an emergency. I rest my case.
Okay.
I don't know what you are saying.
Which schools did you attend at the secondary level? The National Science and Math quiz is back. I'm just interested.
St. Peter's.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You attended my older brother's
St. Peter's.
of blessed memory.
I went to Ghana Secondary in Tamale.
Pesco back.
Okay. So both of you feature every now and then.
Yes.
We're back at the regionals. What are you looking forward to from your schools?
Oh, Pesco has to shine.
Pesco has to shine.
Yes.
I remember some years back when you were quoting the Bible and all of that.
So my heart is with Ganasco, but my resources are with the schools from my constituency.
Yeah, I see.
Islamic Secondary.
All right.
They have been doing well of late in there.
Al-Hassan Suini, of course, Member of Parliament for Tamale North, he joined the conversation. We also had Dr. Dixon Adomaku Kisi, Member of Parliament for Anyaso Utum, joining me in the studio on this conversation. But coming up, we're going to be taking a look at some other matters. The Ghana Mining and Energy Summit. It's a biennial conference and exhibition organized by the Ghana Chamber of Mines with endorsement from the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, among other pertinent agencies. We'll be having a conversation with them right here on the AM show. Do stay.